following program is classified G. It's suitable for all ages.
Tonight, in these times of difficulty, Sri Lanka has witnessed a rise in protests stemming from economic hardships. But has this gone to the extent of undermining the institutions that govern a country? What are the responsibilities of the executive, legislature, and most importantly, the judiciary in this junction? How can the judiciary address issues in a manner where it could assist in finding a proper solution for the problems at hand? Right, welcome to Law, Land and Liberty, where we are keeping with the promise of bringing in a contemporary legal motion and breaking it down for our viewers. Now, today is a very special program, and before I tell you why it's special, I'm going to give a brief introduction to our guest. He was, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong in any of these instances, he was the youngest Crown Counsel within our country at 24 years of age. He was a former Attorney General, the former President of the Court of Appeal, has 41 years of service in the judicial system, and was coincidentally the 41st Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, former Chief Justice Sarath and Silva. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you for that complimentary introduction.
So, your experience in this field is vast. It has gone over 2 constitutions. You have been there when there were 2 different kind of constitutions were there. The experience on the ground, one would say we are not witnessing at least those institutional knowledge being trickled down to the current generation. So the objective of our program generally is to teach the general students of law, the contemporary, the normal human the human being, about what is happening within our country, the legal establishment within our country, and who the topic that we want to discuss today is, given that you have been very vocal about this also, the current economic situation, and there's an entire political situation within our country that has been going on for some time. Leaving all of that aside, we are in a position where we talk about the responsibilities of certain institutions, responsibilities of people, even to one another. In that sort of scenario, sir, a lot of things that we have to discuss within our program. The central question which I want to ask you is, what can the judiciary do in this specific junction? I have a lot of questions to ask you with regards to how you managed to have the judiciary running during a time of conflict within our country, and there was so much more tense, I would say, than the situation that we have right now. So, how do you introduce, or how do you break down the question of what the judiciary can do in this specific junction of our country?
Dhanidhu, thank you very much for that introduction. I have gone through not 2, 3 constitutions.
3 constitutions, sorry.
When I assumed office as Crown Counsel, our 1947 constitution, under which we gained independence in 1948, was in operation. So I was Crown Counsel. That's why I became Crown Counsel.
Yeah.
So then there were 2 Republican constitutions. So it's 3 constitutions in all.
3 constitutions.
3 constitutions in all, and I have held office under all 3 of them. Recently, someone asked me, why can't you bring this British constitution to our system? It's working well there. I said, Britain has no constitution. So British constitution as such, the conventions are the base of our 1947 constitution, which in my view worked the best. It was drafted by Sir Ivor Jennings. He had a broad perspective of the Sri Lankan experience. He was a first Vice Chancellor of the University of Peradeniya. Yeah. And he had discussions with the Right Honourable D. Senanayake, who was our first Prime Minister. So that was a very fine constitution. Although it was not drafted by a Sri Lankan as such, India had Dr. Ambedkar, we had Sir Ivor Jennings. But he had the Sri Lankan experience. And there was an evolution of our constitution. From 1803 onwards, British rulers, imperialists as we may call them, but they brought Sri Lanka as a model colony.
Yeah.
You had the Colebrook Commission, then there were McCallum, so many reforms. So they developed to a certain point. Now, you raised the question about the judiciary. The unique thing about the British system is the independence of the judiciary. Now, in Britain, the monarch is the key feature.
Yes.
Now we saw the celebrations of
the Queen, yes.
Platinum. I may just digress to a certain point. I didn't think of speaking about this. But they marched to a single drum when they felicitate the Queen. There was I am from Trinity College, Kandy. There was a famous poet called Reverend Senior. His poems are well known. So he had a long series of poems. At the end of it, this was way back in the early part of the 20th century, he said, Ceylon will never improve until the people of Sri Lanka learn to march to a single drum. I remember when I saw this Queen celebration, you have to march to a single drum. So in that drum, there are so many things that harmonize.
Yeah.
So there are three institutions. In Britain, although head is the Queen of all institutions, still there are three institutions, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Now you focus this question on the judiciary. Now legislature and executive, they are all elected. They are responsible to the people whom they elect. Yeah. Indirectly, the judiciary is also responsible to the people because judicial power under our constitution is exercised by parliament through courts. Okay. So there is a responsibility. So the judiciary is the balancing force. The balancing force is the judiciary. That's a very, very important thing. The judiciary has to command the respect of all segments, not of any partisan politics. You can have friends, yes. You can have people whom you support, but you have to have the command of all people. Now, in this, you said that I went through trying times. It was indeed so. There was a 1971 uprising. Yeah. Then I was Crown Counsel, and I was put to investigate and prosecute this. There were 90,000 people who were in custody. We got through all that through the judicial process. There was a commission of Supreme Court judges. First they had 5, we had then 2 commissions. Yeah, we went through the whole process. No one was taken summarily and executed. Everybody was dealt with under. And the judicial process was accepted. So that is what I'm saying. So it was started under the 71, the 1947 8th Constitution, then 1972 Constitution brought about certain things. But the judiciary played this. Now there are 5 judges of the Supreme Court sat in this Criminal Justice Commission, which tried the 1971 insurrection main accused. Thereafter they divided into 2 commissions, and we went through this process. So there was confidence. The government had confidence that the judiciary will deal with this properly. The parliament had confidence. And the people who were tried also had confidence. I don't think anyone has complained up to date that they were unfairly treated in that process.
Even if you're guilty or not guilty.
Yeah, you're guilty or not guilty. No, we went through the process. Anybody who pleaded guilty, a lot of people pleaded guilty. Finally, we had trials on in respect about 2,000 people. But that was also trials. Right. So the judiciary has to command the respect. And the judicial arm must be established all over. I found this a big challenge, Danidu, with the LTT taking control, or JEP never took control of any areas.
Regions, yeah.
Regions. LTT took over control, and judicial process virtually stopped. The judicial process virtually stopped.
If I'm not mistaken, sir, they call them Elam courts. They had you the Chief Justice of one area, and that's the sort of division that they created. So there was a far more tense time that we can even imagine.
No, it was flashed in the Sunday Times. Yeah. And Chief Justice and Chief Justice of their courts. Really, although Jaffna we nominally control, it was their system that was functioning. Right. And they had a Chief Justice. So then that was a huge challenge. That was a huge challenge. We have to re-establish courts, gaining the confidence of the Tamil people. At the same time, assuaging the counterparts in the south yeah. That we are carrying out through the correct process of law, and that otherwise they get activated and they try to take the law into their own hands.
Be alienated from the process. Yeah.
So wherever the army took control, we went and established courts. Now I have photographs. I'm also surprised. The foundation stone for the Jaffna Court Complex was laid in 2004, when the and it was opened in 2007. The Punerin camp was just on the other side. So we won the confidence of the Tamil people. That was a huge factor which enabled the government to, what shall we say, winning the war is not the correct word. I think we have used the wrong word there. Right. To overcome the problem. Yeah. I think we should have always looked at this as overcoming the problem that had been created by a certain group of persons, armed persons. So that I think we got the message wrong there by saying winning the war. I retired soon after that. In 2009 June, war was over.
During that time, yeah,
May.
Yeah.
May. And I knew we were getting the act wrong there itself, because there was a huge camp that was set up, Manik Farm. I thought that was a big mistake. And I told General Chandrasiri, who was in charge, I said, General Chandrasiri, dismantle this camp as soon as possible. Let these people go back to their homes. But he said, sir, it is beyond my control. Why don't you speak to the whom? Secretary Defense.
Right.
So I said, no, I have no time to do all that. But I knew we were getting that wrong. So that was wrong. So where the now judiciary was able to, if I continued, I would have definitely issued an order to dismantle that camp.
Right.
There is no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where the judiciary must play a role, a fairly dynamic role. Now in this situation where there are protesters, they are legitimately protesting. Yeah. There are shortages. This has resulted from mismanagement. There was one family that had taken control. Through the democratic process, of course, people have voted. Yeah. But people didn't vote for them to get together and establish this. Okay. You see, person in Vayama voted for Mahinda Rajapaksa. Person in Hambantota voted for Chamal Rajapaksa. Far apart. Yeah. But they didn't expect this cluster to form. Right. So that was where the problem arose. So they identified everything that is wrong with the government with this cluster. Some of it was not beyond this cluster. Yeah. That is obvious. Yeah. So the judiciary had a fairly active role to perform in this situation. Now that I am afraid it has not met up to those very high standards.
Yes, I think that's exactly where we want to take this discussion, sir. Because during your time, I believe there was an active sort of the overlooking criteria of how judges functioned, and that sort of a proactive sort of engagement from the side of the judiciary. Now, without getting like political in any of these instances, where do you see so that the judiciary can support either the because this question comes from a series of other issues that we have seen now. There's a concept within society where they have an issue with law enforcement. Sometimes they say, law enforcement doesn't occur properly. They would point the finger at the police or different institutions. Is it that are we not clear about who enforces the law in certain scenarios? Because if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to issues such as money laundering, there'll be a separate part within the central bank which would issue either the complaint or of that sort, and then the investigation will be done from another institution. Are we not clear about which institutions have which powers? Are the institutions not clear about it? Why is there still at this junction also a bit of a confusion, I would say? with regards to who has to do what, because the people will generally always maybe blame the law, blame the judiciary, maybe for unfounded reasons. But one has to admit that there is some form of confusion in these regards, because people are saying, okay, look, if public property is being damaged, if without getting too political, when the public representatives' homes were damaged, why wasn't the law enforcement there, in the front lines? So do we have some form of confusion, sir, about this?
There is. You're quite right there. There is a fair amount of confusion in this. Because this situation, anyone could have envisaged. I saw it happening from the security of my home, and I don't get involved in this public affairs at all. I saw it happening, and wherever it is, my opinion was sought, I gave it. I saw it evolving. Yeah, there was our economy with so many factors. There was this pandemic. There's global recession, oil prices, Ukrainian war, tourism failed, Middle East remittances, whole lot of things. So our people in control should have known there is a huge problem. There is a huge problem waiting to explode. Now this is the main thing is to see that there is a problem. You don't have to wait for the explosion. Now that kind of foresight is necessary. That kind of foresight is necessary. I think Mahinda Rajapaksa at the prime of his career had that kind of vision.
Yes.
He could see something emerging. He's not a very clever man, but he had a vision. And sometimes he'll call me and said, Sarath, there is a problem like this. What do you think about it? He never interferes in court cases. And we said, I'll see what I can do about it. That's all. He leaves it at it.
Yeah.
So this problem was evolving. Then of course you must draw the fine lines. Certain aspects are for the judiciary. Certain aspects are for the police. Certain aspects are for the armed forces. Certain aspects are for the politicians. So when there is a crisis brewing, now there were shortages. There are bound to be protests. There are bound to be protests. Now the protest has to be accommodated at the incipient stage.
Yes.
When people started gathering in street corners and protesting with lanterns, anybody with a little intelligence should have known this will evolve into some kind of... now that thing was lacking. Okay. I think Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa didn't visualize that. Okay. And Mr. Basil Rajapaksa had no clue about it. I think his entry to politics, he was disqualified from contesting, was the biggest mistake. The 20th century, amendment of the Constitution was brought in to bring him in. Mm-hmm. There is no gainsaying in that. Yeah. So he should have known the limits of his capacity. You can't take over finance ministry in that chaotic situation unless you are really very, very experienced person. Right. Ranil Wickremesinghe has some of these qualities. And he is making best use of it. Now, Basil Rajapaksa had none of them. So he took over this. Then, of course, you must see now the thing is brewing because there are shortages, there are power outages. Now, address those things first. Right. Foremost thing is not to pay up the bank loans on bonds. Right. You put that to another department. Okay. Now, that negotiation of our old debt and things like that should have been put to another section altogether. Okay. Recently, someone written an article, we should have had a public debt office. No, central bank was handling that very well. But the central bank mechanism got politicized. Right. Now, if you take the British model, I think the first governor of the central bank was Exeter. Now, they had the central bank as an independent unit. Okay. And I can remember when I was doing these foreign loans from the Aegis department, I came back after my postgraduate studies in Europe. I was handling that. And Mr. Rajalingam, who was in control, there were some loans that we taken. I used to ask Dr. Rajalingam, he said, don't worry, sir. Central bank has a perfect command of our loan portfolio. Right. We will handle this. Okay. So they had that. So that section should have been handled separately. And we should, but first and foremost, you must look after your people. Now that is where they went wrong.
Okay.
That is where they, first and foremost, you must have gas for your people, electricity for your people, fuel for your people. Then, so you should have negotiated with the IMF and got some debt. Now we have written experts. There are experts who handle this situation.
Exactly.
Basil Rajapaksa is not the expert. Now, we have studied to some extent in these foreign universities, but we are not the experts.
Yeah.
I would have said we had some expert.
Right.
Although we did these loan agreements, we had our consultants. When I go to New York for some loan agreement, he is the man who sits by my side.
Right.
I just turned around and asked Jim or something. I said, Jim, now what to say about this? So he notes down and I say what he... So there are experts on this. We should have engaged a team of experts to study our loan portfolio, freeze that.
Right.
Which of course the present governor did at the 12th of April. He drew a line.
Right.
This line should have been drawn long ago.
So
Then get the money for our immediate needs. Then you could have sorted out this problem at that incipient stage. When I was going down, I saw people at Kohola Junction, Nuegoda Junction. Now you must go down to those people and say, right, you want gas, you want this electricity, we'll try to get it.
Yeah.
We'll try to...
the basic needs have to be
Basic needs.
Right.
First is that.
Yeah.
So use your $500 million for that.
Right.
Put this into
Second place.
second part, handled by experts who will spread that over a certain period of time.
So I need to give you more time. We have many things to cover. We'll take a very short break. You're watching Law, Line and Liberty. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law, Line and Liberty. We are in conversation with the former Chief Justice of our country, Sarath and Silva. So a very insightful first segment that we just passed. My next question, it stems from this concept known as the contrarian question, which says, what common truth do very few people agree with you on? And I want to ask that question through the lens of the judiciary, because during the lustrous tenure where you had to deal with the judiciary, deal with the highest courts of our country, have you seen, I'm pretty sure you have, and you have presided over those judgments as well, where the judiciary could provide an example to that specific society, specifically in times of turmoil, specifically times where people are not sure who to turn to. The judiciary has in the past stood and given that sort of strength to the people to provide some form of vision. What sort of common truth can the judiciary find in this scenario? What sort of example can they set? Is it possible? Maybe the first question should be, is that something that we can do, or is that away from judiciary's mandate?
No, it is something that we can do. I don't think it is away from the judiciary's mandate.
Right.
It is something that we can do. First and foremost thing is, you have to build up confidence. That is a sine qua non, essential. Now, Parliament need not build up confidence of the people because Parliament is contrarian. That's the basis of your mission.
Yeah.
Parliament is a forum for contrarian views.
Yes.
Executive can build up, but still it is also, in some respects, subservient to the Parliament's divisions.
Yeah.
But the judiciary can build up confidence, Judiciary has to build up confidence. It's a very delicate balance. Now, judiciary, my experience was that we in the Supreme Court, the higher level of judiciary, do not really come into contact with the people. Right. There are fundamental rights cases that come, but that is some of these things come to the Supreme Court on the third level of appeal. They have lost their...
A lot of money has been spent also.
A lot of money where people have got tired of the process. The man on the job is the magistrate. That is the foremost thing. And I realized this. So when I used to tell the magistrates, you have more power than me, because you can send a man to jail immediately. I can't do that.
The court of first instance.
Yeah. You can handle every situation. Right. So you have the people who come before you. They are human beings who come before you, charged with offences, complaints and various things. On the other hand, you have the law enforcement officers. So both sides are before you. Yeah. So you have to gain the confidence of both sides. So that is where I say confidence building. Right. Now, earlier in the British period, it was known as the police courts. We took away from that. Yeah. We took the magistrate's role up. Earlier, the government agent was also the judge. So we took away from that, so that an independent person, a person is seen as an independent person who is there seated on that bench. So you have a huge role to play. And I used to say, you act according to the law and the conscience. If you go wrong, I will take the blame. If you are right, you get the credit. So that message was really run down, given to them, and even today they recall, they said, sir, we felt so safe when you were there. That is because they don't understand. I used to impart this message to them. Now they have forgotten the message. They have forgotten the message because message is given not in a way of message. No, you can't tell this directly. Yeah. You have to tell it directly, drawing various examples. So we felt so confident when you were there. That is because I said, you do the right thing. If you go wrong, I take the blame. And several times I have got the blame. I'm subject to virulent criticism. But I say, no, this is, the judge has done the correct thing. There is no question about it. So they have to build up confidence. Now at the same time, when you build up confidence, you have to build up confidence on the part of the police and the other officials who come, various officials come. Now they can't be downgraded or degraded, because your orders are carried out by them. Right. Now that's a huge balance that the judge has to do. Now your orders are useless if the police are not there to carry it through. Right. Now in what happened on the 9th of May, the police didn't know what to do. You can't blame them because they have got orders earlier, don't arrest these people, don't disturb these people. Now suddenly there's a disturbance. Now they don't know what to do.
But can we actually say that, sir? Because doesn't the police have sort of like a set guideline where when they witness some sort of injustice, they have to act on it regardless of, or is it that the courts should impose that constantly? Because that seems a bit impractical then.
Not that courts should impose that constantly. The courts have to be mindful of that. And courts have to impart that confidence. I think by this time what happened was this Ramukkana incident really was mishandled. Yeah. It was a very bad situation. But the police officers who handled that didn't handle it properly. They should have brought the judicial officer immediately. Those are our foremost. We had a crime of scene operation which was done. Those things were done by Justice Shirani Tilakawadana, who used to study this. So how we handle the crime of scene should be preserved like that. There was a death that took place. So we said there was a SOCO called some special police team. You cordon down that area. If the magistrate was brought to that particular point at the time incident took place, this problem wouldn't have arisen. Right. Then the SP may not have been remanded. Right. Magistrate would have cautioned him to come to court or something like that. So when the SP, who is the highest ranking police officer, is remanded, down the line, the morale goes.
There's a fear that's
that is the problem. But there, the scene had been completely cleaned off. Now that is completely contrary to all the instructions we have been giving them. There were foreign experts. There was a Swedish lot. They were training our police officers, and this scene of crime or handling obviously. So they have been taught all that. But at that particular moment, somehow it has escaped, and they brought next day. The magistrate didn't know what the real scene was. So, given that and very senior lawyers have come on the other side, so magistrate remanded. Of course, that was a popular decision on the part of the bar.
Yes, I think that is something that I want to discuss. But yes, continue, sir.
Yeah, and I thought that was a serious, I felt that was a serious mistake. That was a serious mistake. Because I knew the police morale will go down.
Right.
Because we have to know that there is a hierarchy in the police. Now that is something that the lawyers also don't understand. You don't hit the head. Now there's a hierarchy in the judiciary. If you go and strike the Chief Justice, if there's the slightest disturbance in the Chief Justice's court, I used to sentence them to jail. If you disregard the order of the Supreme Court, you go to jail straight away. I was criticized badly, but then people respect magistrates' orders. Otherwise, there would have been problems. Then this followed immediately thereafter. So the police were perplexed.
Yes.
There is and I think the IGP should have played a more active role, but anyhow, you can't blame him also. He's now crowded in by various circumstances. But somewhere the mistake, Danidu, was there. When you have a very senior officer, SP is a very senior grade of the police, being remanded, then the fellows below that and the other people get taken. They don't know how to handle.
Yeah. So I think you gave a very good segue to the next segment that I want to discuss. So we'll take a very short break, and I want to give you some time to really establish that argument. You're watching Law and Liberty. Stay with us. Welcome back to Law, Land and Liberty. We are in our last segment and we are in conversation with the former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, Sarath and Silva. So I think, as I said before, the segue that you gave was quite important, and the key term for this segment that I want to pick on is intimidation, and how detrimental that is in the long run for our country's law enforcement, any aspect, and in the short run, because we are in the short term because of the economic situation that we are facing, which has trickled down to almost all tiers. How does the you suggested the method. You mentioned, look, the higher courts, the literal head should be stricter in those measures so that the entire chain is respected. Is there anything else that the judiciary can do? Is there something that the judiciary can pay attention to? Or how is that really understood? Because as you said, if that respect falls, if we don't look at the courts as our final sort of place to go to, then the situation will be much more chaotic. How do you approach that?
Well, this has to be looked at a little wider, Danidu. I hope I have your permission to do so. Now, the peaceful protest, since this is a large segment, I'll touch upon this also. Peaceful protest was a very valid process. And both aspects are positive. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa provided the forum for protest. The protesters made use of that, and Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa was tolerant of the protest. All that is nice within the democratic framework. But when there is something nice within the democratic framework, other elements also come in. There is another side to this coin. Now that is the side of the coin that came into play. Use in this. Now that is something that any person should have envisaged. You get a peaceful crowd, you can easily move into this crowd and create problems. We have had problems like this in the past. We have problems. We had the Easter Sunday attack, tragic thing, tragic event, perpetrated by an extremist. Yeah. So extremism is in our system. It's in the human system. You can't eliminate this. Extremism is all over the world. Yeah. In Britain, in the US, there are regular shootings all over the world. Extremism is there. So people make use of, political forces make use of extremism.
Exactly.
So, and that should have been envisaged. That extremism is the one that surfaced because of a failure to handle this primary situation. Now, they should have known that there is an extremist element that came in. And the thing is, unfortunately, the protesters identified all 225 members of parliament. Now, when you take all 225, there are no one else. Right. So, if you say all 225 members should go, then there's a huge vacuum. That is what gave the space for this extremism. You create a vacuum. You create a vacuum. And they targeted the members of parliament were targeted. It is amazing. I don't think that has happened anywhere in the world. It's an attack on democracy. Attack on the rule of law.
Exactly.
Basically, attack on the rule of law. Now, if you take these fundamental rights, there is a basic right to a residence. Recognized right from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 14 of our Constitution. Now, that surely everybody is entitled to. If you, the day you don't respect anybody's right with regard to his residence, his privacy, then of course, that's the end of human rights, democratic freedoms, everything. Now, here all were targeted. All were targeted, and there is total inaction on the part of the law enforcement authorities. Yeah, they were free to do these massacres, absolute massacres. Now people are being arrested. Yeah. Now people are being arrested. And the segments of the society that are being arrested, when you see them there, I don't have to say that here, yeah. But I know them. They are not the type of people who are inspired revolutionaries, because inspired revolutionaries don't go and burn other people's homes. Right. Even Vijayveera didn't do that. Right. Even Vijayveera didn't do that. So even Prabhakaran didn't do that. No, he didn't burn any persons. He entered the person. Yeah. But so the residence. Now, when you do that kind of thing, there is devastation, a total breakdown of the law and order situation. It erodes the confidence of the members of parliament. Now, however much you criticize members of parliament, it is that 225 that holds office. They are lawfully elected from different parties. Now, we see the leader of the opposition also is attacked. Yeah. No, the leader of the opposition was attacked. I saw that video clip. I know if that happened to his father, I know what would have happened to the people who attacked him. So, but he had to meet a hasty retreat. It's very sad, no? Yeah. No, I feel sad. I feel sad that the leader of the opposition obviously went there with good intentions. Try to see what he can. Otherwise, he won't do that openly, no? Yeah. He could have done that discreetly, set up somebody. No, he went. So that shows across the board, this violent element attacked everybody. They want to replace not only the government, but they want to replace the leader of the opposition also. So that is the alarming situation. Anybody can make use of this. So we have to very quickly bring this to normalcy through the rule of law. And I am sure the courts have a fundamental role to play to instill confidence in the police and the law enforcement agencies that the rule of law has to be maintained. Everybody's residence must be protected. Anybody who has invaded that right should be and must necessarily be brought before the law and dealt with. Anybody who conspired with that should also be equally dealt with under the rule of law. Then only we can instill confidence. And I think the peaceful protesters who are doing this must get it into their minds that they have been made use of. Exactly. That they, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Mahieash, who was there before you. well, he was aiming somewhere there. But this is the correct occasion to say that. Mm-hmm. I think Mahieash's words are coming true now. So, no, he probably, with a vision, saw it.
Yes, that is exactly what happened, I think.
He saw it coming. You can be made use of. You can be made use of. So they have been made use of. They had a very peaceful, very nice protest, democratic framework. The man who provided the place was tolerant. And I would have never withstood that. If someone were to stand in front of my office and go home, I wouldn't have reacted the way the present president is reacting. Admirably well. You must give a man his due. He has failed. I don't agree with many of them. I think he had a supreme ability to fail. And he himself says he has failed. So, but anyhow, he is tolerant. Yeah. That is a very important element, Janitu. He was tolerant. So the protesters also must realize that we have now to preserve an international image if our country is to recover.
Exactly.
So we have to recover on the basis that we are a civilized country, that rule of law prevails. Then only the tourists will start coming. Then only the tourists will start coming. And that this is an aberration which was made use of by, which was perpetrated by making use of a democratic, peaceful protest, which was tolerated and accommodated by an accommodating head of state. Right. Whatever it is, the others are all now left office. Yeah. Everybody has left office. So the protesters, that way the democracy has worked. I think we should place ourselves in the forefront as a place where democratic change can take place in this way. Right. But we must know the negative aspects and say that we are going to deal with very firmly. Then only people will have confidence, the tourists will start coming. The present Prime Minister, there are now new politicians who have emerged, Mr. Dhammika Perera now, as soon as he starts, before doing anything, if you protest, then there is, now this is like before the batsman goes into the, to take the bat out, you try to bowl him out. No, he is not disqualified. Yeah. He is a citizen of this country, not disqualified by being MP. Let him play his innings. If there is something wrong, protest. Yeah. But till then, give him all the support. Yeah. That is what we must do. Right. So that is the thing. We must make use of this situation proactively. I think, Dhanendra, that is a message that you wanted, that your original question contrary. We must make use of this thing proactively to instill confidence in our law enforcement authorities, instill confidence in the judiciary, instill confidence in our politicians, that we stand by them if they do the right thing.
Right. I think very important, very wise words. Thank you for spending this time with us, the 41st Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, Chief Justice Sarath and Silva. Thank you so much once again, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Dhanendra, and convey my regards to Mahieash.
Thank you, sir. Well, as the discussion made clear, during a time of crisis, all institutions that govern a country should take a proactive role that supersedes their usual approach to duty. In capturing this idea, Mahatma Gandhi once said, "There is a higher court than courts of justice, and that is the court of conscience. It supersedes all other courts." That is all from us here at Law, Land and Liberty. If you had missed today's program, you can watch the entire episode on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ada Derana English. I'm Dhanendra Tanwasam. Have a great night.